Captain Marcus Vale stared at the view screen as his ship, the Aurora, drifted through the vast emptiness of space. 3 months had passed since they left Earth's solar system, and every day brought them deeper into uncharted territory. The crew of 42 had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might never return home. But Marcus had never imagined they would find something like this. The damaged vessel hung in space like a broken bird, its hull twisted and scarred by whatever had attacked it. The ship was unlike anything humans had ever built, with flowing curves that seemed almost organic and a metallic surface that shimmered with colors that had no names. It tumbled slowly in the gravity well of a massive gas giant, its lights flickering weakly against the cosmic darkness. "Captain, we're picking up a faint distress signal," Lieutenant Tom Baker reported from a station. "It's not in any language our computers recognize, but the pattern suggests it's automated." Marcus rubbed his tired eyes and studied the readings on his screen. The alien vessel was roughly the same size as the Aurora, but its design suggested a completely different approach to space travel. Where human ships were built for function and durability, this craft seemed designed for elegance and speed. "Any signs of life?" Marcus asked. "Scanners show one life form aboard," Dr. Emma Ross called out from her medical station. "Whatever it is, it's weak and getting weaker." Marcus made his decision quickly. First contact with an alien species was exactly what humanity had hoped for when they launched this mission, but finding that species dying and alone was not what anyone had expected. Still, they had a duty to help if they could. "Tom, bring us alongside their ship. Emma, prepare the medical bay for a possible alien patient. Everyone else, suit up for a boarding mission." The next hour passed in careful preparation. The Aurora's docking tube extended toward the alien vessel, and Marcus led a small team through the airlock. The moment they stepped inside the strange ship, they knew they were walking through something extraordinary. The corridors were wider than they needed to be for humans, with walls that curved gracefully upward into archways that seemed to have been grown rather than built. Emergency lighting cast everything in a soft blue glow, and the air had a sweet smell that reminded Marcus of flowers after rain. "Life signs are coming from the bridge area," Emma said, checking her scanner. "Stray ahead and up 1 level." They found her collapsed on the floor near what looked like a command chair. She was clearly not human, but she was beautiful in a way that made Marcus catch his breath. Her limbs were longer and more graceful than a human's. Her skin had an opalescent quality that shifted between silver and pale blue, and her hair fell in waves of deep purple around her shoulders. She wore what looked like a uniform made of some flowing material that seemed to move with its own life. When Marcus knelt beside her, her eyes fluttered open. They were large and dark, with an intelligence that was unmistakably aware and afraid. She tried to sit up, failed, and then did something that shocked everyone present. She threw her arms around Marcus and held on as if her life depended on it. The sound she made was unlike anything any of them had ever heard. It started as a low, keening wail and rose to something that sounded like music and heartbreak combined. Their translation devices struggled with the alien language, producing fragments like "lost" and "alone" and "the last" before giving up entirely. "It's okay," Marcus said softly, awkwardly patting her back as she clung to him. "We're here to help." She seemed to understand something in his tone, if not his words, because she pulled back just enough to look at his face. Her dark eyes searched his features as if she was memorizing every detail, and then she pressed her forehead against his chest and made that heartbreaking sound again. "Captain, we need to get her to the medical bay," Emma said quietly. "Her readings are all over the place, and I don't know enough about her physiology to help her here." Getting the alien woman back to the Aurora proved more difficult than expected. Not because she was too weak to move, but because she refused to let go of Marcus. Every time someone else tried to help support her weight, she would panic and grip him tighter. In the end, Marcus had to carry her himself while the rest of the team cleared the path ahead. The medical bay on the Aurora was designed to handle human injuries and illnesses, but Emma had managed to adapt some of the equipment for their unexpected patient. The alien woman submitted to the medical scans without resistance, but her eyes never left Marcus's face, and whenever he moved more than a few feet away, she would reach out toward him with obvious distress. "Her body chemistry is fascinating," Emma reported as she studied the results. "Carbon-based like us, but with some significant differences in how her organs function. The good news is that our atmosphere seems to be compatible with her biology. The bad news is that she's suffering from some kind of systemic poisoning. Poisoning, Marcus asked. That's the best word I have for it. Something is attacking her cells at a molecular level, breaking down her immune system and her ability to process nutrients. Without knowing more about her species, I can't even begin to develop a treatment. The alien woman had been listening to their conversation with obvious attention, and now she struggled to sit up on the medical bed. She pointed to herself and said something in her musical language, then pointed to Marcus and repeated the words several times. I think she's trying to tell us her name, Tom suggested. She nodded eagerly and pointed to herself again. Kira, she said clearly, then pointed to Marcus with a questioning tone. Marcus, he replied, touching his chest. Her face lit up with something that might have been relief or joy, and she repeated his name several times as if testing how it felt in her mouth. Then she reached out and touched his hand, and her expression became serious again. Over the next few hours, Kira showed a remarkable ability to learn basic English words. She seemed to understand that communication was crucial, and she threw herself into the task with desperate intensity. By the end of the day, she could manage simple sentences, though her grammar was still uncertain. My ship, she said haltingly, attacked by... She struggled with a word that their translation devices couldn't handle, then gave up and simply said, bad things. Everyone dead, only Kira alive. We're sorry, Marcus said gently. Do you know what attacked your ship? She shook her head and made that keening sound again, softer this time but no less heartbreaking. All gone. All my people gone. Kira is last. The weight of those words settled over the medical bay like a heavy blanket. Marcus had been in combat situations before, had lost friends and comrades, but the idea of being the sole survivor of an entire species was beyond his ability to truly comprehend. You're safe now, he told her. We'll take care of you. She looked at him with those large dark eyes and nodded slowly. Marcus will help Kira, she said, and it wasn't a question. That night, as the Aurora continued its journey through the star system, Marcus found himself unable to sleep. He kept thinking about the way Kira had immediately attached herself to him, as if she had recognized something in him that even he didn't understand. Dr. Ross had set up a bed for their guests in the medical bay, but Kira had refused to sleep until Marcus promised to stay nearby. He was sitting in a chair beside her bed, watching her fitful sleep, when she suddenly sat up and looked around in panic. The moment she saw him, she relaxed, but she didn't lie back down. Bad dreams, she said quietly. Always bad dreams now. About what happened to your ship? She shook her head. About being alone. About forgetting. About failing. Failing at what? But she just looked at him with those impossibly sad eyes and said, Marcus will understand soon, when Kira shows him. She reached out and took his hand in both of hers, and Marcus was surprised by how warm her skin was. Her hands were larger than a human woman's, with longer fingers that ended in what might have been claws, but felt more like polished stone. Promise, she said urgently. Promise Marcus would not leave Kira alone. There was something in her voice that went beyond simple fear of abandonment. It was as if his presence was somehow necessary for her survival in a way that had nothing to do with medical care or physical protection. I promise, he said and meant it. She squeezed his hands once and then lay back down, but she didn't let go. Marcus spent the rest of the night holding the hand of an alien woman who had lost everything, wondering what she meant about showing him something and why she seemed to think he was the only person in the universe who could help her. By morning, it would become clear that Kira's attachment to him was not random at all, and that whatever had destroyed her people was far more terrible than any of them had imagined. 3 days had passed since they found Kira, and Marcus was beginning to understand that her attachment to him was unlike anything the crew had ever encountered. She followed him everywhere, staying close enough to touch his arm or shoulder whenever possible. When duty called in the different parts of the ship, she would wait outside whatever room he entered, her large dark eyes fixed on the door until he emerged. The crew had tried to be understanding at first. Tom Baker had offered to show Kira around the ship, thinking she might be curious about human technology. Dr. Ross had attempted to engage her in simple conversations about her species and their medical needs. Even Chief Engineer Jake Miller had brought her small mechanical puzzles, hoping to distract her from whatever trauma she was experiencing. But Kira showed little interest in anyone or anything except Marcus. She would be polite to the others, nodding and saying thank you in her improving English, but her attention always returned him like a compass needle finding magnetic north. It's not normal behavior, Emma said during their morning briefing. Even accounting for cultural differences and trauma response, this level of attachment suggests something deeper. Marcus looked around the conference table at his senior staff. They were all good people who had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might face the unknown. But none of them had expected to become caregivers for a dying alien who seemed to have claimed him as her personal guardian. Her English is getting better every day, he said. Maybe we can get some answers soon. That's another thing, Emma continued. Her learning speed is incredible. She's picking up our language faster than any human child could, but she still can't or won't explain why she needs to stay so close to you. Tom shifted in his chair. The crew is starting to talk, Captain. Some of them think she might be dangerous, that this attachment could be some kind of alien mind control. Marcus had heard the whispers too. Fear of the unknown was natural, and Kira's behavior was certainly unusual enough to make people nervous. But when he looked at her, all he saw was someone who was deeply afraid and completely alone. She's not controlling anyone, he said firmly. If anything, she seems more frightened than we are. After the meeting, Marcus found Kira waiting for him in the corridor outside the conference room, just as he had expected. She fell into step beside him as they walked toward the observation deck, where she had taken to spending her afternoons staring out at the stars. Kira, he said as they settled into chairs facing the large viewport, we need to talk about why you stay so close to me. She was quiet for a long moment, watching the gas giant slowly rotate below them. Its storm band swirled in patterns of red and gold, beautiful and violent at the same time. Marcus's people are afraid of Kira, she said finally. They're not afraid of you personally. They just don't understand. She turned to look at him with those impossibly expressive eyes. Kira does not understand either, but Kira knows what must happen. What must happen? Instead of answering directly, she began to tell him about her people. Her English was still simple, but her meaning was clear enough. The Valdari had been spacefaring for thousands of years, spreading across dozens of worlds in their home system. They were peaceful by nature, more interested in art and philosophy than conquest or war. We made beautiful things, she said, her voice taking on a dreamy quality. Cities that sang in the wind, ships that danced between the stars, music that could make stones weep. What happened to them? Her expression darkened. Sickness came. Not natural sickness. Made sickness. Someone sent it to kill all Valdari. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Someone attacked your people with a biological weapon? She nodded slowly. Started small. Few people sick on one world. Then more worlds. Then all worlds. Sickness was made to kill only Valdari. Other species safe, but every Valdari dies. How many of your people were there? Billions, she whispered. All gone now. Kira watched them die. Watched the last ships try to escape. One by one, they stopped talking on the radio. One by one, they went dark. Marcus tried to imagine the horror of watching an entire civilization die while being powerless to stop it. The scale of such genocide was beyond anything in human history. How did you survive? Kira was on science ship, far from home worlds when sickness started. Ship had special air filters for dangerous gases in space. Filters kept out sickness for a while, but not forever. She rolled up the sleeve of her strange uniform and showed him her arm. Marcus could see dark veins beneath her opalescent skin, spreading upward from her wrist like ink and water. Sickness is in Kira now, growing stronger every day. Soon Kira will die like all the others. Emma had been right about the systemic poisoning, but she hadn't understood that it was a bioweapon specifically designed to target Kira's species. Marcus felt sick thinking about whoever had created such a thing. We'll find a cure, he said. Emma is brilliant. If anyone can figure out how to help you, she can. Kira shook her head sadly. No cure. Makers of sickness were very smart. They made sure no Valdari could survive. Then why? Marcus started to ask why she stayed so close to him, but she cut him off. Because Kira must give gift before dying. Very important gift. Most important thing in universe. What kind of gift? She struggled with the words, switching back to her own language several times before finding the English she needed. When Valdari dies, we must pass our memories to someone else. Not just our own memories. All memories of our people. History, knowledge, art, everything that made us who we were. Marcus stared at her. You're talking about some kind of mental transfer? Yes, but very dangerous for a person who receives memories. Most species cannot handle so much information. Their minds break. Most species. Kira has met many different people in the galaxy. Traders, explorers, diplomats. But humans. She paused and looked at him intently. Humans are different. Stronger minds. Flexible thinking. Kira believes humans can carry Valdari memories without breaking. The pieces were starting to fall into place. Kira's attachment to him wasn't random or based on simple gratitude for being saved. She had chosen him specifically because she believed humans, and perhaps him in particular, had the mental capacity to preserve her people's entire cultural legacy. That's why you won't leave my side, he said. You're evaluating me. Not evaluating, she corrected. Preparing. Gift must be given carefully, slowly. Receiver must be ready, must understand weight of what they will carry. The weight of an entire civilization. Yes. They sat in silence for a while, watching the gas giant storms rage in the distance. Marcus tried to process what she had told him. She was asking him to become the living repository for billions of lives, to carry the memories and knowledge of people he had never met, but who were now extinct except for the dying woman beside him. What if I can't handle it, he asked. What if my mind breaks like the others? Then Valdari memories die with Kira, and it will be as if my people never existed at all. The responsibility was staggering. Marcus had made life and death decisions as a ship's captain. But this was different. This was about preserving or losing an entire species' legacy forever. Why me specifically, he asked. There are other humans on the ship. Kira was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. When Kira first saw Marcus, Kira could feel his mind. Strong, but also kind. Willing to carry pain for others. This is rare in any species. She reached out and took his hand in both of hers, just as she had done that first night. Kira knows this is much to ask. But if Marcus says no, then everything that made Valdari beautiful will be lost forever. Their music, their poetry, their discoveries about the universe, their way of seeing beauty in all things. Gone. Marcus looked out at the stars and thought about the responsibility she was placing on his shoulders. To become the sole keeper of an alien civilization's memories. To carry the weight of billions of lives in his mind. It was terrifying and overwhelming. But it was also an honor beyond anything he had ever imagined. How long do we have? He asked. Days. Maybe 1 week. Sickness is moving faster now. And the transfer process? Dangerous for Marcus. Painful. Might change him forever. But Kira will guide him through it. Teach him how to hold so many memories without losing himself. Marcus squeezed her hands gently. Let me talk to my crew. They deserve to know what we're considering. For the first time since they had found her, Kira smiled. It transformed her face completely, making her look less like a dying refugee and more like the brilliant, ancient people she represented. Marcus will do this thing, she said, and it wasn't a question. I think I will, he replied. But I need to understand exactly what it means first. She nodded and settled back in her chair, still holding his hand as they watched the stars together. For the first time in days, she seemed at peace, as if sharing her burden had lifted some of the terrible weight she had been carrying alone. Marcus knew that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't fully comprehend, but looking at Kira's grateful smile, he also knew he couldn't let an entire civilization disappear into the darkness without a trace. Marcus called an emergency meeting with his senior staff that evening. The weight of Kira's request had been pressing on his mind all day, and he knew he couldn't make this decision alone. When he explained what Kira had told him about the memory transfer, The room fell into stunned silence. She wants to download the memories of an entire civilization into your brain? Tom asked, his voice barely above a whisper. That's one way to put it, Marcus replied. According to Kira, it's the only way to preserve what's left of her people. Emma was already shaking her head. Captain, the human brain isn't designed to handle that kind of information overload. We're talking about billions of individual memories, thousands of years of history, entire lifetimes of experiences from people you've never met. She says humans are different from other species, stronger mentally. Based on what evidence? Emma shot back. She's met a few human traders and diplomats. That hardly qualifies as a comprehensive study of human neurology. Jake leaned forward in his chair. What exactly did she say happened to the other species who tried this? Their minds broke, Marcus said quietly. She wasn't specific about what that means. I can guess, Emma said grimly. Complete psychological breakdown, permanent catatonia, or death from neural overload. The human brain has limits, Captain. Push it too far and it simply shuts down. Marcus had expected this reaction from his medical officer, but he also understood Kira's desperation. She was the last representative of an entire civilization, carrying the weight of preserving everything her people had ever been or accomplished. What if she's right, he asked. What if humans really are capable of handling this kind of mental load? Then you'd be gambling your life and sanity on the word of a dying alien who's admitted she doesn't fully understand the process herself, Tom said bluntly. And if I don't try, an entire civilization disappears forever. The room fell quiet again. Marcus could see the conflict on his crew's faces. They were good people who understood the magnitude of what was at stake. But they were also his friends who didn't want to watch him destroy himself for a cause that might be impossible anyway. There's something else, Emma said slowly. Even if you survive the initial transfer, what would it mean for the rest of your life? You'd be carrying the memories and experiences of billions of people who aren't you. How would that affect your sense of identity? Your relationships? Your ability to function as a human being? Marcus had been wondering the same thing. Would he still be himself after the transfer, or would he become something else entirely? Would he be able to relate to other humans when his mind was filled with alien thoughts and experiences? I don't know, he admitted, but I keep thinking about what Kira said. If we don't try, it's as if her people never existed at all. That's not your responsibility, Tom said firmly. You're the captain of a human exploration vessel, not the guardian of alien civilizations. Maybe that's exactly what I'm supposed to be. Before anyone could respond, the conference room door chimed. Marcus looked up to see Kira standing in the doorway, her pale hands gripping the frame as if she needed support. She had clearly been waiting outside, and from the expression on her face, she had heard at least part of their conversation. Kira is sorry, she said quietly. Did not mean to listen, but needed to know if Marcus would help. Marcus gestured for her to enter. We're just discussing the risks involved. She moved slowly into the room and stood beside Marcus's chair. The dark veins under her skin were more visible now, spreading up her arms and beginning to show on her neck. Whatever bioweapon was killing her was accelerating. Kira understands fear, she said, looking around the table at the assembled officers. It is right to be afraid. Memory gift is a dangerous thing. Then why ask Marcus to do it? Emma asked, not unkindly but with obvious concern. Kira was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. In Kira's culture, there is a story about First Valdari who went to stars. She was afraid, like you are afraid, but she went because someone had to carry the light of her people to new places. She turned to look at Marcus directly. Marcus is like that first Star Walker, strong enough to carry light when others cannot. But what if I'm not? Marcus asked, what if I fail and die in the process? Then Kira will die knowing she tried to save something beautiful, better than dying with no hope at all. The simple honesty of her words hit everyone in the room. This wasn't just about preserving abstract knowledge or cultural artifacts. This was about a dying woman's desperate attempt to ensure that the people she had loved continued to exist in some form. How much time do we have to decide? Marcus asked. Kira touched the dark veins on her neck. 2 days. Maybe 3. After that, Kira will be too weak to guide the transfer. After Kira left to rest in the medical bay, the debate continued for hours. Emma pulled up everything they knew about human neurology and memory formation, trying to calculate whether the brain could physically handle such an enormous influx of information. Tom researched historical examples of individuals who had suffered severe psychological trauma, looking for parallels that might predict the outcome of the memory transfer. Jake, practical as always, focused on the technical aspects. If this goes wrong, what's our backup plan? How do we get the captain back if his mind shuts down completely? We don't, Emma said bluntly. If the neural pathways are damaged beyond repair, there's nothing we can do with our current medical technology. So we're talking about a one-way trip into the unknown. Essentially, yes. Marcus spent that night in his quarters, staring out the stars and thinking about the choice before him. He had always prided himself on making rational decisions based on available evidence, but this situation defied rational analysis. There was no precedent for what Kira was asking, no way to calculate the odds of success. Around midnight, he found himself walking to the medical bay. Kira was lying on her bed, staring at the ceiling with those large dark eyes. When she saw him, she sat up slowly. "Cannot sleep," she said. "Neither can I." He pulled up a chair beside her bed, just as he had done that first night. But now he understood so much more about what was at stake. "Tell me about your people," he said. "Not the history or the politics. Tell me about what they were like." Kira's face softened. Valdari loved to sing. Every morning, entire cities would wake up singing together, different songs from different neighborhoods, but all harmonizing across the sky. She closed her eyes, as if she could still hear those morning songs. Children learned to paint before they learned to walk. Art was not a separate thing from life. It was life. What else? When Valdari met strangers, first thing they did was share a meal. Food was sacred because it connected all living things. To eat with someone was to say, "You are part of my family now." Marcus found himself smiling despite the sadness of the situation. They sound like wonderful people. They were, but also just people. They argued sometimes, made mistakes, felt jealous or angry or afraid. Kira wants Marcus to understand they were not perfect, but they were beautiful in their imperfection. And all of that would be lost if we don't do the transfer. Not just lost, Kira said quietly. Erase, as if billions of people never laughed or cried or loved or dreamed. As if all their art and music and stories never existed. Marcus understood now why she had chosen him specifically. It wasn't just about his mental capacity or emotional strength. It was about his ability to see the value in preserving something beautiful, even at great personal cost. "The transfer process," he said. "Explain exactly how it works." Kira sat up straighter, recognizing the shift in his tone. Valdari have special organ and brain, like small jewel. It stores not just memories, but emotions, sensations, entire experiences. When we touch foreheads with another being, we can share what is stored there. And you have the memories of your entire species stored in this organ? Not all, but many thousands of years' worth. The most important things. Greatest achievements, most beautiful art, deepest wisdom. Enough to keep Valdari's spirit alive. What happens to you during the transfer? Her expression grew sad. Sharing memories is how Valdari died with dignity. We pass on what is most precious, and then let go of life. It is a peaceful way to leave the world. Marcus realized what she was really asking of him, not just to receive her people's memories, but to be present with her as she died, to give her death meaning by ensuring her sacrifice preserved something invaluable. "If I agree to this," he said slowly, "what guarantees do I have that I'll still be myself afterward?" "None," she admitted. "But Marcus will not become Valdari. He will become something new. Human who carries Valdari light. Bridge between two peoples." They talked until dawn, with Kira explaining every detail she could remember about the transfer process. By the time the ship's day cycle began, Marcus had made his decision. He found Emma in the medical bay, running final diagnostics on Kira's condition. "Her neural activity is changing," Emma reported. "Whatever biological clock is driving this disease, it's accelerating. I'd say we have maybe 36 hours before she's too weak to attempt any kind of mental transfer. Then we do it tonight, Marcus said. Emma turned to stare at him. Captain, I have to strongly advise against this. The risks are enormous. So is the alternative, Marcus replied. I won't let an entire civilization die on my watch when there's even a small chance we can save something of who they were. Emma studied his face and saw the determination there. She had served with Marcus long enough to know when his mind was made up. If you're really going to do this, she said quietly, then we need to prepare for every possible outcome, including the possibility that you might not survive. The medical bay had been transformed into something that looked more like a sacred temple than a place of science. Kira had asked for specific lighting conditions, explaining that the Valdari memory transfer worked best in soft, blue-tinted illumination that matched the natural light of her home world. Emma had reluctantly agreed, though she kept all her monitoring equipment active and ready. Marcus lay on a medical bed beside Kira's, their heads positioned so they could touch foreheads without strain. The dark veins under Kira's skin had spread across most of her body now, and her breathing was shallow and labored. Whatever time they had left was measured in hours, not days. Are you certain about this, Captain? Emma asked one final time. Once we begin, there's no stopping the process. Marcus looked at Kira's pale face and saw the mixture of hope and fear in her large dark eyes. She had spent the last few hours teaching him meditation techniques that might help his mind stay organized during the overwhelming flood of memories that was coming. I'm ready, he said, though he knew that was probably a lie. How could anyone be ready for something like this? Tom and Jake stood near the door, their faces grim with worry. The entire senior staff had volunteered to be present, knowing this might be the last time they saw their captain as the man they knew. The weight of that possibility hung heavy in the air. Kira reached out and took Marcus's hand in both of hers, just as she had done so many times over the past week. But this time, her touch felt different. There was a strange tingling sensation, as if electricity was flowing between their skin. Remember what Kira taught you, she said softly. Do not fight the memories. Let them flow through you like water through a river. Try to hold on to who you are, but do not be afraid if you feel yourself changing. What if I lose myself completely? She squeezed his hand gently. Then you will find yourself again, but you will be more than you were before. Trust Kira. Trust the process. Emma checked her instruments one more time. All monitoring systems are active. If your vital signs become dangerous, I'm stopping this immediately. Marcus nodded and looked at Kira. I'm ready when you are. She smiled, and for a moment the pain and exhaustion disappeared from her face. Marcus is brave. Valdari would be honored to live on in such a person. She shifted on her bed until their foreheads touched. Her skin was surprisingly warm, and Marcus could feel a faint vibration, almost like a heartbeat but faster and more complex. Close your eyes, she whispered. Open your mind. Let Kira show you the beauty of her people. The first sensation was like stepping into warm sunlight after being in darkness for years. Marcus felt a rush of pure joy that wasn't his own, followed by the sound of thousands of voices singing in harmony. The morning songs Kira had described weren't just something her people did. They were an expression of their fundamental connection to life and each other. Then the memories began to flow. Marcus found himself standing in a city that defied every human concept of architecture. Buildings grew from the ground like crystalline trees, their surfaces shifting between colors that had no names in any human language. The air itself seemed to sing, and everywhere he looked, he saw beings like Kira moving with fluid grace through streets that curved and flowed like rivers. But these weren't his memories. He was experiencing the life of someone named Veltar, a Valdari artist who had lived 3,000 years ago. Marcus could feel Veltar's emotions as if they were his own, the excitement of creating a new sculpture that would change color with the viewer's mood, the deep love for a partner named Ishin, the quiet satisfaction of a life spent bringing beauty into the world. The memory faded and was replaced by another, then another. Marcus experienced the wonder of a Valdari child seeing the stars for the first time, the careful patience of scientists discovering a new form of energy, the bittersweet joy of an elder passing their knowledge to younger generations. Each memory was complete and vivid, filled with sensations and emotions that were completely alien yet somehow universal. Time lost all meaning. Marcus might have been experiencing the memories for minutes or hours. There was no way to tell. He felt his sense of self stretching and expanding as more and more experiences poured into his mind. He was a teacher showing students how to paint with light itself. He was an explorer, mapping the currents between stars. He was a mother, singing her child to sleep with lullabies that had been passed down for millennia. The sheer volume of information should have been overwhelming, but somehow Marcus found that his mind was adapting to accommodate it all. It was as if his consciousness was expanding to make room for these new experiences without losing his core identity. He remained Marcus Vale, human starship captain, but he was also becoming something more. Then came the darker memories. The first reports of the mysterious illness that affected only Valdari. The growing panic as world after world went silent. The desperate attempts to find a cure or an escape. Marcus experienced the final days of the Valdari civilization through dozens of different perspectives, feeling their fear and desperation as if it were his own. He felt the moment when Kira's grandmother realized she was the last person alive on her home world. He experienced the crushing loneliness of survivors scattered across the galaxy, trying to reach each other as the bioweapons slowly killed them one by one. He felt Kira's own despair as she watched the last signals from the last ships fade into silence. But even in the darkest memories, there was something else, a fierce determination to preserve what was beautiful about Valdari culture, a refusal to let death have the final word, a love so deep and powerful that it transcended individual survival. Through it all, Marcus could sense Kira's presence guiding him, helping him navigate the flood of foreign experiences without drowning in them. She was like a lighthouse in the storm of memories, keeping him anchored to himself while still allowing him to absorb everything she was sharing. Then, gradually, the flow began to slow. The memories became less intense, more like echoes and direct experiences. Marcus realized that the transfer was nearly complete, and with that realization came the knowledge that Kira was dying. He opened his eyes and found himself back in the medical bay of the Aurora. Emma was leaning over him with obvious concern, checking his vital signs while monitoring equipment beeped frantically around both beds. "Captain, can you hear me? How you feel?" Marcus tried to speak, but found his voice wouldn't work at first. His mind felt impossibly full, as if someone had poured an ocean into a cup and somehow made it fit. Slowly, carefully, he tested his thoughts and memories. He was still himself, Marcus Vale, born in Chicago, captain of the exploration vessel Aurora. But he was also so much more. He could remember the taste of Valdari food, the feel of their art under his fingers, the sound of their music in languages he now understood. He knew their history as if he had lived through it himself, understood their science as if he had studied it for decades, felt their emotions as if they were part of his own heart. I'm okay," he managed to say, though even as he spoke, he wasn't sure that was entirely true. He was changed in ways he was only beginning to understand. He turned to look at Kira and felt his heart break. The dark veins had spread across her entire body now, and her breathing was barely perceptible, but her eyes were alert and focused on his face. "Did it work?" she whispered. Marcus reached out and took her hand. As their skin touched, he could sense the last flickering remnants of her consciousness, and he realized she could sense the memories now living in his mind. "Yes," he said, and his voice carried harmonics that hadn't been there before, echoes of Valdari speech patterns. "They're safe. Your people are safe." Kira's face lit up with a smile of pure joy. Kira can feel them. They are alive in Marcus's mind. They are singing. And Marcus could hear it too, faint but unmistakable, the sound of countless Valdari voices joining together in one final morning song. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever experienced. "Thank you," Kira whispered. "Thank you for carrying them." Her eyes closed peacefully, and Marcus felt her life force gently fade away. There was no struggle, no fear, just a quiet release as she finally let go of the burden she had carried alone for so long. Emma immediately began checking for vital signs, but Marcus already knew what she would find. Kira was gone, but in a very real sense, she wasn't gone at all. She lived on in his memories now, along with billions of her people. "Captain?" Tom's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Are you all right?" Marcus sat up slowly, his mind still processing the enormous change that had taken place. He looked at his crew members and saw the worry and confusion on their faces. They were looking at him as if he were a stranger, and in some ways, he supposed he was. "I'm different," he said simply, "but I'm still me." Emma frowned at her readings. "Your brain activity is unlike anything I've ever seen. There are new neural pathways forming even as we speak. What did she do to you?" Marcus looked down at Kira's peaceful face and gently closed her eyes. "She gave me the greatest gift anyone has ever received. She made me the keeper of an entire civilization's soul." He stood up from the medical bed, and as he did, he could feel the vast library of Valdari knowledge settling into organized patterns in his mind. Their science, their art, their philosophy, their history. It was all there, waiting for him to explore and understand. But more than that, he could feel their essence, their fundamental way of seeing the universe as a place of infinite beauty and possibility. They had not just given him their memories. They had shared their very souls. 6 months had passed since Kira's death, and Marcus stood on the observation deck of the Aurora, watching a new star system come into view. But he was no longer the same man who had started this journey. The Valdari memories had settled into his mind like sediment in a deep lake, organized and accessible, but fundamentally changing the way he saw everything around him. The changes had been gradual at first. Marcus found himself understanding principles of physics that human science was only beginning to discover. He could look at the swirling patterns of a nebula and recognize the mathematical beauty that the Valdari had spent centuries studying. When the ship's engines developed problems, he instinctively knew how to recalibrate them using techniques that wouldn't be invented by humans for decades. But the real transformation went deeper than knowledge. Marcus had begun to see the universe through Valdari eyes, recognizing connections and patterns that had been invisible to him before. Every star was part of a vast symphony. Every planet held the potential for beauty and life. Every species they encountered was a unique note in the cosmic song. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal," Tom reported from the bridge. "It's coming from the third planet in the system." Marcus made his way to the command center, where the crew was analyzing the incoming transmission. The signal was weak and fragmented, transmitted on frequencies that suggested another non-human source. "Can we make sense of it?" he asked. "It's similar to the Valdari signal pattern we first detected," Emma said, "but the language is completely different." Marcus listened to the transmission, and suddenly the fragmented sounds began to make sense. Not the words themselves, but the emotional undertones, the rhythm of desperation, the universal cadence of the species crying out for help. "Set course for the planet," he ordered. "Maximum speed." "Sir?" Tom looked confused. "We don't know what we're flying into." "We're flying into another first contact situation," Marcus said quietly. "And judging by that signal, we might be too late to save them, but not too late to preserve what they were." The planet was a beautiful world of blue oceans and green continents. But as they approached, it became clear that something terrible had happened. The orbital sensors detected massive cities that had gone dark, space stations drifting without power, and the electromagnetic signatures of a civilization in collapse. "It's the same pattern," Emma said grimly as she studied the readings. "Massive population centers suddenly going silent, infrastructure abandoning its normal functions, all the signs of a biological weapon attack." Marcus felt a familiar ache in his chest, though now he understood it came from both his human heart and his Valdari memories. The pain of watching another civilization die was almost unbearable. "Any survivors?" he asked. "Scanning now," Tom replied. "Wait, I'm picking up life signs from a small outpost on the southern continent. Looks like maybe a dozen individuals. Take us down." The outpost was clearly a research station, built into the side of a mountain overlooking a vast desert. As the Aurora's shuttle approached, Marcus could see figures moving around outside the buildings, some of them pointing up at the approaching human ship. The beings they found were unlike any species humans had encountered before. They were tall and slender like the Valdari, but their skin had a metallic quality that shifted between copper and gold. Their eyes were large and multifaceted like insects, but filled with an intelligence that was unmistakably sapient. The leader of the group approached Marcus as he stepped out of the shuttle. When she spoke, her voice had a musical quality that reminded him of wind chimes. And though he didn't understand her language, he could sense the desperation and hope in her tone. "My name is Marcus," he said slowly. "We received your distress signal." The being studied his face intently, then did something that made Marcus's heart stop. She reached out and touched his forehead with her own, just as Kira had done. The contact lasted only a moment, but it was enough. Marcus suddenly understood that these beings, who called themselves the Nethel, had developed a limited form of telepathic communication. Through that brief contact, she had sensed something impossible in his mind. "You carry the memories of the dead," she said in accented but clear English. "How is this possible?" "A friend taught me," Marcus replied. "Her people were killed by a biological weapon, just like yours. Before she died, she passed her memories to me." The Nethel leader, who introduced herself as Zara, led them through the research station while explaining what had happened to her people. The pattern was identical to what had befallen the Valdari, a sophisticated bioweapon that targeted only their species, spreading from world to world until billions were dead. "We are the last 12, Zara said sadly. "The bioweapon has not reached this outpost yet, but it will. The air filters can only protect us for a few more days." "Who's doing this?" Marcus asked. "Who's destroying entire civilizations?" Zara showed him recordings from their deep space monitoring systems. The images were grainy and distorted, but they showed ships of a design that Marcus recognized from the Valdari memories. Sleek vessels with organic curves, but twisted and corrupted, their hulls covered in dark growths that pulsed with malevolent life. "The Harbingers," Zara whispered. "They were once like us, a peaceful species that valued knowledge and beauty. But something changed them, corrupted them. Now they travel from system to system, destroying every other intelligent species they encounter." Marcus felt his blood run cold. The Valdari memories contained references to the Harbingers, ancient warnings about a species that had once been their allies but had become something monstrous. If the same entities were responsible for both genocides, then this was not random destruction, but a systematic campaign to eliminate all intelligent life in the galaxy. "Why are they doing this?" he asked. "We do not know," Zara replied. "Some say they believe only one species should exist in the universe. Others think they have been driven mad by some terrible experience. But their purpose is clear. They will not stop until all other thinking beings are dead." That night, as the Nethel prepared for what they believed would be their final days, Zara approached Marcus with a request that he had been expecting. "You have the ability to carry memories," she said. "Would you be willing to preserve something of my people as well?" Marcus looked at the 12 survivors, each of them representing thousands of years of Nethel culture and achievement. Their art was different from the Valdari, more mathematical, based on complex geometric patterns that somehow conveyed deep emotions. Their music was composed of harmonic frequencies that could actually alter the listener's brainwaves. Their science had unlocked secrets of quantum mechanics that humanity was centuries away from discovering. "It will be dangerous," he warned, "adding more memories to what I already carry." "But possible?" Marcus consulted the Valdari knowledge in his mind. There were references to individuals who had received multiple memory gifts, though it was extremely rare and carried significant risks. But it was possible. "Yes," he said, "but I need to warn you about something else. If I'm right about the Harbingers, this won't be the last dying civilization we encounter. If I'm going to preserve the memories of multiple species, I need to understand what that will mean for me." Emma had been monitoring his brain activity for months, documenting the ongoing changes in his neural structure. When he explained what he was considering, she pulled up her latest scans. "Your brain is already operating at levels I didn't think were possible," she said. "The neural pathways are more complex than anything in medical literature. Adding more memories could push you beyond what human physiology can handle. Or it could push me beyond human limitations entirely," Marcus replied. He spent the next day working with Zara to understand the Nethel memory transfer process. It was similar to the Valdari method, but more intense, requiring a deeper mental connection. When they finally began the procedure, Marcus felt his consciousness expand again to accommodate another complete civilization's worth of experiences. This time, The process was easier. His mind had already adapted to carrying alien memories, and Valdari knowledge helped him organize and integrate the new experiences. By the time Zara and the other Nethil had peacefully passed on, Marcus carried within him the essence of two entire civilizations. But he was no longer entirely human. The crew of the Aurora noticed the changes immediately. Marcus moved differently now, with a fluid grace that combined human purposefulness with Valdari elegance and Nethil precision. His eyes had taken on a depth that seemed to reflect the wisdom of ages. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics from multiple species. Most importantly, his understanding of the universe had expanded beyond anything a normal human could comprehend. He could see patterns that connected distant stars, understand the underlying mathematics that govern cosmic evolution, and recognize the signs of civilizations in distress from light years away. "Captain," Tom said one morning as they prepared to leave the Nethil system, "what are we going to do about the Harbingers?" Marcus stood at the observation port, watching the stars with eyes that now saw them as the Valdari and Nethil had seen them, as beacons of beauty in an infinite ocean of possibility. "We're going to find every dying civilization in this galaxy," he said quietly. "We're going to preserve their memories, their knowledge, their essence. And when we've gathered enough wisdom from enough species, we're going to find a way to stop the Harbingers." "That could take decades," Emma said. "Maybe centuries." "Then that's how long it takes." Marcus turned to face his crew, and they could see the determination burning in his transformed eyes. Humanity has been given a gift that no other species possesses: the ability to carry the memories of the dead without losing ourselves. We can become living libraries, preserving everything beautiful and wise that has ever existed. Tom frowned. "But, sir, what does that make us? If we're carrying the memories of dozens of species, are we still human?" Marcus smiled, and in that smile, his crew could see traces of Valdari joy and Nethil wisdom blended with human warmth. "We become something new," he said. "Something the galaxy has never seen before. We become the memory keepers, the species that ensures no civilization truly dies as long as one of us remembers." As the Aurora turned toward the next star system, Marcus felt the weight of two civilizations' worth of memories settling into permanent patterns in his mind. But instead of feeling burdened, he felt honored. He was no longer just a human exploring space. He was a guardian of galactic heritage, the bridge between what was lost and what could still be saved. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, the Harbingers continued their work of destruction, unaware that a new force had entered the galaxy, one that would preserve everything they sought to destroy.